Hello everyone, and welcome to Nat1Grung's YouTube channel. This is going to be the first episode in a series for miniature painting. To start off, I'd like to go into why we paint miniatures, what we use miniatures for, and the different reasons that you may want to look into getting miniatures involved into your own games. Miniatures are included in the game to add a sense of depth and to give you a physical item in front of you to make that connection in your head between the character you're playing, the enemies you're facing, or the NPCs you're talking to, and what is actually going on in the game in front of you. So with that being said, miniatures are not required to play D&D, and you shouldn't feel like you need to have miniatures in order to play. The basis of this channel is for us to try and introduce as many people to D&D as possible and help make it accessible to as many people as we can. So despite this video being about painting miniatures, this isn't something required to play. It's just something that personally me and a lot of other people find a lot of fun in, on top of just playing D&D. To begin, I'm going to start by going over the items that are going to be necessary. So obviously for painting miniatures, you're going to need some paintbrushes. So right here I have an assortment of a couple different ones I use. So obviously you're going to have your standard paintbrushes, and they can vary in size. This is for more fine work. Obviously this is going to have a larger coverage. And then you can get into some specialty brushes like dry brushes, angled dry brushes, and these are actually just makeup brushes, which I find to be really useful for dry brushing just because they've got a nice distribution of bristles. And some of these are specialty miniature painting paintbrushes, but don't feel like you need to. You can just go to the craft store and just pick up a $5 packet. Literally any brushes will work. Whatever's in your budget, you can make work. So after the brushes, obviously the next important thing is going to be your paints. So I have a pretty wide array of paints. I've got quite a few of the Army war paints, and I've got some Vallejos as well. These are all acrylic based paints, and if you want to expand into some other stuff, I also am going to be using some contrast paints. So all of these paints I've showed so far are going to be the paints that are used in the miniature I'm going to be painting today. It's going to be Dungeon Gray from the Army War Painter, Transparent Blue from Vallejo, Bright Gold Metallic from Army War Paint, Fur Brown from Army War Paint, and then I'm going to use a contrast paint from Citadel called Wildwood. Wildwood is honestly the most widely used contrast paint that I've gotten. Wildwood is a brown based contrast paint that you can use for pretty much anything that you want on the darker spectrum. It's really good for doing terrain like wood and stuff like that, but it does really well for kind of giving whatever you're painting that grimy, worn in look. So after we get through paints, I just want to go over the fact that you don't need to get specific acrylic paints for miniatures. If you want to just go to the craft store, buy the big things of acrylic paint, just get whatever colors, whatever you have access to, and you can just start painting. So other than the paints, some other things you might be needing depending on the miniature setup you're going to use, you might want a set of sprue cutters. So these are going to be used for getting off little bits and pieces on some of your miniatures. Like on this one here, if you can see, there is some little tiny pieces of resin from the prints. So you're just going to go in there with the sprues and you're just going to snip those off of there. And after you get those snipped off, you may want to come in with a piece of sandpaper. Any sandpaper will work. This is 120 grit. So after you snip off some little pieces of that, you're just going to come in and you're just going to file that down. If you don't have sandpaper, one of the nail files, the soft ones that are kind of in the shape of a one of those tongue depressor pieces of wood, I find that those work really well. So other than that, some other things that you're going to need, I always keep super glue with me, because even when you're not having to glue a miniature together, odds are you're going to run into a situation where one of your miniatures breaks. So something that I have that's not necessary, this is a electric paint mixer. So these smaller bottles here, they have a tumbling ball in them that just helps mix up the paint to make sure you don't get any clotting or anything like that. So you just depress those on here, this will vibrate and it'll mix up the paint. I think this is actually meant for tattoo inks, but it works perfect. Something that I have that is not something that you necessarily need to have, you can use whatever kind of setup you want, but I personally like to use a wet palette. So right now we've got all the paints laid out on here that I went over earlier we're going to be using on the miniature. So a wet palette is essentially a piece of paper, and underneath that piece of paper you're going to have a sponge. That sponge is going to hold some water in it, and it's just going to make sure over time your paint isn't going to dry out halfway through. And it also is going to come with a lid, so if you need to step away for a little bit and come back, you can just pop that lid on there and it'll help even more to make sure that paint stays nice and moist. You can get replacements for the wet palette. So this is, I think, a ream of like 30 sheets, and I think it was like $3 or $4. Something I use as far as the miniatures, you'll want to go through and you will want to prime your miniatures depending on the ones you get. It's always a good idea to put a known good primer on there, even if they say they come primed, because not every single miniature is going to have a good base coat on there, so your paint might not take as well as you're looking for. When you're all done painting, you may want to look into something like a clear coat, because that will make sure that over time your miniatures, the paint's not going to wear off. Like if you look at the top of this one, you can see some spots where the paint's starting to wear off. This one hasn't received a clear coat, so that can help prevent some stuff like that from occurring. So when you are getting ready to start painting your miniature, you want to make sure that you have a cup with some water. This is not for drinking. Don't drink this water, as tempting as the colored water may be. You want to get your cup and you want to have it ready, because one of the most important parts of painting with acrylics like this is the amount of water you have in your brush, because that is going to decide how well or how not well the paint is going to flow off of your brush. So once you get your brush well doused, you're just going to wipe it off on the edge a little bit, and then you're going to go on your hand and you're going to brush onto your hand, and you're going to go until the water stops kind of puddling up like that on your finger. So that last stroke, it was puddling. The next one, you can see it's not puddling near as much. That is about the amount of water you're going to want on your brush. After you've got that amount of water on your brush, you're going to go down to whatever color you're going to use, and you're going to swipe small swatches of it off to the side. And what you're looking for is you're trying to get your brush fully saturated with paint, because the more paint you can get in your brush, the more is going to be able to flow off onto whatever you're painting, and the less you're going to have to come back to your palette. So that is getting paint on your brush. Once there is already paint on the brush and you want to go maybe switch to another color, or you're done painting for that session, what you're going to do is you're going to obviously submerge the brush in water. So you're going to try not to rub the brush bristles on the bottom or the sides of the cup, because an important part of painting is maintaining the grouping on your bristles here. So you want to make sure, obviously it's more important on finer tips and doing smaller details, but you want to make sure you keep the tip of your brush as fine as possible to make sure you can maintain cleaner edges and lines. So cleaning it off, you're gonna swish it around in the water, and then what you want to do is grab a paper towel or something, and you're gonna do side strokes on it, rubbing along the edge of the brush, not coming directly down, because you don't want to be squishing your bristles up. When you go and you choose the miniature you are going to be painting, there's quite a few things you're going to want to consider before you dive into painting the miniature. So obviously you get the miniature and then you're going to go in and prime it. So you are more than welcome to just do a base coat of white, base coat of black, whatever you have available. But something I like to do is called a zenith highlight. So you are going to go through and you are going to prime the whole miniature in black. And after you do the whole miniature in black, you're gonna come from an upper angle from the top down, and you are going to hit it with white or maybe like a tan, whatever color is going to lend into the color palette you're going for. And what that's going to do is that's going to create some contrasts for the shaded areas. So if you look from underneath, you can see a lot more black showing through on the lower side, whereas the upper side you're getting a lot more lighter colors. So as you go through and you're putting your coats of paint on, it's going to help lead into kind of conveying all of those shadows in the lower spots that aren't receiving as much light. And that'll just hopefully make the job a little bit easier for you when you're going through and trying to create those shades. So other than the highlights and the lowlights from this, you want to go in and consider the paint job overall. So you can choose a myriad of different paint jobs for different ones, but what you want to think about is what that miniature is, and like what that miniature is trying to convey to the story, or what you're trying to get across with that miniature. So a lot of times you can kind of group them together. So like this one right here and this one right here. In the campaign they were kind of grouped together as demons. So I chose some color schemes that were kind of complementary of each other, very similar. So at a quick glance on the tabletop, your players and you are going to see them. You're going to see the similar color schemes, and you're going to kind of tie them together in your head without even having to really think about it. You can also do the same thing with your player characters to kind of create a sense of unity between them, to just kind of create a little bit of something that kind of draws them together. These are two player characters right here, and both of them kind of have complementary color schemes, leaning more towards the neutrals. Obviously, depending on the individual character and maybe even the tone of your campaign, you may choose to go like more flamboyant, more colorful with something. Obviously, like a grung is going to be a little bit more vibrant, so it will play into the species as well as the general vibe of that character. Something like this right here, this wraith, is not something that you necessarily have to go through and do a full individualized paint job on. This is something that I did in a batch along with these other ones, where you're just kind of creating a general feeling from them. So like the darker colors, it's kind of leaning more into the idea of yeah, this is probably going to be a bad guy. So that will work for that. But you can also get a little more detailed with them. So this one, you can see we went with like a gloss black, but you can do things like, I was trying to convey that this one had a poisonous effect. So you can kind of tip the end of the spikes in like a vibrant green color. And you can add little accents like that wherever you want to just kind of help get across different ideas that maybe some character will look at that individual miniature and make an assumption based on the way it looks without actually knowing something. And that little stuff like that can help kind of drive your players to start using their creativity to kind of fill in the blanks, where you don't even have to go in and say that, oh, it has green tip spikes. They can see that on the miniature and they can draw that conclusion themselves. And then maybe they can start to fill in more blanks here and there to kind of honestly make your job a little bit easier as a DM. So you can do other things like these are a couple of little dogs. Obviously they got saddles, so you can see that these are two different dogs, but both of them are going to have kind of the same general paint job. You're just going through, you're doing the body as a whole, and then you're just kind of going through and doing the highlights on the saddles. I just want to say I appreciate you guys watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, share with anyone if you find this video to be helpful, and I appreciate it. Thank you.